God'll get you for that one.
Maude is owned by Shout Factory.
God'll Get You for That, Walter is produced for entertainment purposes only.
Sponsored in part by Findley's Friendly Appliances. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of God'll Get You for That, Walter.
But he won't in this episode.
No, but there were plenty of opportunities for him.
Plenty of opportunities, yes.
And welcome to God'll Get You for That, Walter, a podcast where we discuss the 1970s hit sitcom Maude. This is our episode 53, and we're going over the Speed Trap.
Yes.
Which was a season 3, episode 5. It originally aired October 7th, 1974. Mm-hmm. It was directed by Hal Cooper and written by Norman Lear and Elliot Shainman. And the script consultant is Rod Parker.
Okay. Oh, we also, I wanted to let everyone know, the last episode, we told everybody that seasons 3 and 4...
Seasons 3 and 4 are on Tubi.
Tubi.
Are on Tubi. That's Tubi.
And I just found out today, seasons 1 and 2 are on Amazon Prime.
Yep.
So if you want to watch anything,
Maude related.
From the actual episodes.
From seasons 1 to 4.
From 1 to 4, you can.
You can now.
You can.
So, what'd you think of this episode?
It was sort of... There were some funny things, but I don't know. It was kind of like...
not exactly.
Not one of the best ones.
Not one of the best episodes. No,
I think because there was very little Maude.
Yeah. I mean, we also have guest stars in this one. We have Hector Elizondo.
Yes.
To those who don't know, he was in The Last Man Standing most recently, which was the Tim Allen sitcom he's in. He played, Joe in the Princess Diaries.
And of course, he was the hotel manager in Pretty Woman.
Yes, he was the hotel manager in Pretty Woman.
Probably one of his most famous roles.
Yep. And he has a very storied resume. Mm-hmm. And, in this episode, I don't know, maybe this was like one of his first forays into acting.
I would think so. At least on TV.
Yep.
I'm sure.
And Al Freeman Jr. is Roy.
Yes.
Hector's character is a nameless cop.
Yes. And what was that actor's name who played Roy?
Al Freeman Jr.
He was really funny.
He was. I enjoyed his character.
He was very funny in this episode.
This episode is definitely more geared towards the Arthur-Walter dynamic.
It felt a little bit like a filler episode.
Yeah, to a degree.
I mean,
it was early on in the season, but there were still a lot of hot button issues that were addressed.
True, which we will get to. Mm-hmm. Now, of course, it opens up in the living room, and we see Maude and Walter. They're coming down the stairs.
Yep, and Maude is irate.
She is furious.
She is irate.
She's telling Walter that he's playing a dirty trick on her.
Yep.
Because he's gonna be going on a fishing trip
for 3 days.
For 3 days with Arthur. Yes. And one of the funniest bits there was
Walter had said, "Do you want to wake up the entire neighborhood?"
Yes.
And Maude says, "Yes."
Yes.
So she opens the door and she screams at the top of her lungs, "Attention, neighborhood! My husband is leaving his wife to unwind in the woods." And we hear a voice call out from the dark, yelling back, "With your mouth, lady, I don't blame him."
I don't blame him.
And that is...
and she says, "Knock it off, Greenblatt."
Yep. And I think that's one of the only moments where we actually hear a Greenblatt. Yeah. Because the Greenblatts are a neighbor of Maude. She calls out to the Greenblatts, I think, like once or twice in other episodes. Uh-huh. But this is like the only time when we actually hear them. We actually hear them.
Right. So Maude, she's mad. They're having a 3-day weekend. Walter is going off with Arthur
in Maude's nephew's camper. Now, to those that don't know, we were introduced to Maude's nephew briefly.
Yes.
In the pot episode.
The pot episode, yeah.
And the character, I don't know the name of the character. Jeff. Mm-hmm. Jeff was the name of Maude's nephew. Mm-hmm. That's important to know.
Yes.
For later in the
on.
episode.
Yes.
So, Maude's nephew's camper is all packed. Mm-hmm. I think at that point, Arthur enters.
Well, Walter, you said something about the demands of marriage, right?
Yes, he needs a break from the demands of marriage.
The demands of marriage.
Could you imagine taking a break from... I am of the mind that if I'm in a marriage with somebody, yes, there will always be like space and time, but also you still come together at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, have there been moments where you just have to say, I'm taking a break?
No. I mean, the most of a break I've said is like, I'm going to go watch one of my Marvel superhero movies. It's 3 hours long. You go do, your thing. I'll be upstairs and watching that.
Yep.
That's about as much of a break from the demands of marriage I take. That's all I need. Because, that's really our thing with, as far as like, because my husband has no interest in like the superhero movies, the sci-fi movies. My love of Star Trek.
That's yours. That's your area of expertise.
He's like, oh, you're watching one of those things you watch. I'm like, yes. He's like, oh, okay. You know.
But I mean, to say the demands of marriage, it's almost a little sexist.
Yeah.
There were a couple of lines in this episode that were incredibly cringy.
Yeah. Very cringy.
But like it was just one of those things where I'm like, Walter, don't be an ass. But
it's such a, I don't know, it's kind of a weird thing.
Yeah, to say I need a break from the demands of marriage.
But also that whole sort of,
like, is Maude that insatiable that she has to have sex constantly?
Oh, I don't think that's what he meant as far as the demands of marriage.
I sometimes think that.
So I think what he was referring to was just the Maude being Maude is the actual demand of the marriage.
But then what's Arthur's excuse?
I don't know. But it strikes me as weird that, like, that whole sort of heterosexual mindset about like having to get away for a weekend with the boys.
Calling the wife the ball and chain, saying that you're like tired of your wife, like just that is such a uniquely heterosexual problem.
Because it doesn't, at least for me,
it doesn't phase
you. It doesn't exist in a homosexual marriage. No, have to be with the boys.
Yeah, I don't.
We are the boys.
We are the boys.
So I don't know.
I don't know either.
Oh, but all right. So then it's at that point Arthur comes in.
Yes,
and once again, just barges right in.
And what is Vivian in tow or?
Yeah, she follows and she's got the worms, which Arthur got wholesale.
Yes,
he has a friend in worms.
When I heard that line the first time, I'm like, seriously, he is such a cheapskate.
Oh. And they're gonna go, and Maude, she wants Walter to give her a kiss goodbye.
And Maude's like, Walter, you're gonna be leaving for 3 days. Doesn't that warrant me getting a kiss?
Right.
And he just races over to her and gives her the tiniest peck on the lips.
Yeah.
And Maude just looks blanketly at him and pronounces, Walter, if you ever kiss me like that again, I'll be facing the other way. And the audience gets a good laugh in, and then of course Maude
the rest of the line,
the perfect timing. She says, "And I'll be tying my shoe."
And they head out, and Vivian basically slams the door behind them.
Yep.
And then that's when Maude and Vivian begin their commiseration.
Yep.
About it's going to be a rotten weekend. A complete disaster. They're sitting on the couch.
And Maude's like, there's only one thing two lonely, desperate women can do at a time like this. And Vivian turns to her and is like, what's that? And she says,
go off our diets. And boy do they ever.
Boy, do they ever.
It cuts right to a scene of them at the
dinner table.
And they are like
shoveling
the food in.
Yes. It is a smorgasbord.
Whipped cream, lobster tails,
clarified butter.
The drawn butter.
The drawn butter.
That's a thing because Maude's eating the lobster tail, and then she's like,
"Where's the drawn butter? There's no more drawn butter.
There's the drawn butter."
But I mean, so much. Like literally, it was meats and cheeses,
everything, and desserts, and.
But we didn't get to the desserts just yet. I think Vivian was eating some fried stuff.
I don't know. I know. I saw the can of whipped cream.
There was.
I mean, it was everything.
Salami and just a smorgasbord of food.
Yeah, and they were just
going ham.
Yeah, and they were really eating.
They were really very much
eating.
Like, Maude was devouring the lobster. And,
Yes.
Vivian says, this is just as good as sex.
Yeah.
And Maude's like, oh, you think so?
Yeah,
try the lobster.
Try the lobster, yes.
And they're just ravenous. They're being completely and totally ravenous.
I miss lobster.
Oh, I'm so sorry you can't eat it.
I can't, because of my gout.
I mean, could you eat imitation lobster?
That I could. It's not the same.
I know it's not.
It's not the same.
You like the experience of cracking something open and eating it with a fork?
No, not necessarily.
Oh, all right.
It's the actual like real lobster with drawn butter.
See, sometimes I wish I could just give people my inability to be allergic to shrimp. But I mean,
Well, I'm not allergic. It's
because of the gout.
It's because of the gout. I mean, I can have a little bit.
But you can't have a lot.
But no.
But I mean, what if you and Frank like split a little bit?
He doesn't like lobster.
Oh,
so
that's upsetting.
And I have to be careful because the last thing I need is to have a gout attack in my foot.
Oh no, we don't want that.
Because then I can't.
You can't fit into heels.
You can't put a heel on.
You can't put a heel on, and with June coming right around the corner, that's a bad idea.
Bad idea. Very
we'll
bad.
We'll save it for July.
Yes.
We'll save it for July.
Yes. I mean, I can have a couple. I can have a little bit.
Okay.
I have a little bit, but not like in my youth. I mean.
You could have eaten it like it was going out of style.
Things like paella, which has, a lot of shellfish.
Fricassee of beaks and claws.
Yeah, I mean, I could go crazy for that. But no more. Life, age is a cruel mistress.
I was at the doctor's recently, and they asked me, and they're like, "Are you allergic to eggs or shellfish?" And I'm like, "No, not yet, but we'll see what age does to me."
Absolutely. She's so kind.
Yeah, huh?
So Maude, they're commiserating, and Maude is saying those two clowns are having the time of their life.
And we cut immediately
to the jail.
To the jail. And
yes.
Hector pronounces, "Welcome to the homiest jail in Vermont." And it really is like a very I don't know. I wouldn't consider that a jail. I would consider that like maybe a 1-star hotel.
Basically. It was like a little podunk police station, right? I mean,
it's been a minute since I've heard the word podunk.
Podunk. That's your SAT word of the day.
That's the SAT word of the day.
So apparently they were speeding and they got caught.
4 miles over the speed limit.
Yeah, 4 miles over the speed limit. Yeah, and I guess the problem was
there were a couple of problems that happened. So. The cop, we'll just call his name Hector because there is no name. Yeah. He literally has no name. He was just a sheriff. And so Hector basically says, if you give me your license and you give me $50, we'll just get this all squared away. You can pay the ticket and leave.
Yes.
And Walter says, I don't have a license.
It. Yes.
And Hector goes, okay, well then do you have the $50? Because Hector was trying to be as just easy as pie, just very simple. Just pay the fine and leave. Pay the fine and
go. Right.
And then that's when Arthur and Walter start getting into this very heated argument over who did what and how.
Yes.
So apparently we find out that the camper, they brought
the canoe tipped over.
They had all the valuables
in a knapsack. And now when it tipped over,
the knapsack is now at the bottom of the lake, bottom of the river, or wherever they were.
Their money, their license, all those things.
Yep.
And the sheriff is like, he's commenting that,
well, it's going to be one of those days.
Yeah, because Walter was saying about, where we come from, and he's like, oh, I know where you come from. You come from New York. I can tell. Because, it's like everything about New York that I hated. I left the pollution. The loudness.
Yep. Yeah. Just complaining about everything that I personally love about New York.
Right. And Walter and Arthur, they continue to fight. And at one point, the sheriff, he does that whistle thing.
Actually, right before that, I think Walter says, "You do, you dummy." Oh, you dummy. And again, they were just really arguing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And the sheriff is like, my brother-in-law put you up to this, didn't he?
Yep.
I think he said because he let his wife get fat?
Yes, he introduced his wife to fat.
Yeah.
I think either the brother-in-law or Hector put his sister-in-law to fat or into fat.
Well, I thought he meant that the brother-in-law did it to get back at Hector because when he married the wife, he let her get fat.
He let her get fat. Yeah.
I don't know.
It was a very interesting thing.
I don't know. So Arthur's saying, well, can't we just, if you let us go, we'll just
wire you the $50.
No, he says we'll send you a check.
Mm.
Yeah, and the sheriff is basically that's so funny. Why don't you try that one on the judge?
Actually,
tomorrow morning.
Did you hear what he did when he put up his 3 fingers?
No.
He said, "Honest Injuns swear on a pigeon."
Oh, I didn't hear that.
Yep.
Oh.
I heard it and I was like, "Oh, that's not fun."
Yeah.
That's interesting.
We don't say those kinds of things.
We don't say those things anymore.
Yeah.
And I mean, again, it's one of those things where it's like you have to acknowledge. And I was even like on my way to your house, I was like, we have to acknowledge that there are just some episodes that are so blatantly stuck in the 70s. Mm-hmm. Like there are some episodes that they can get away with airing today, but there are just some where it's like the network that would air it might get a few complaints. But yeah, that was something. And I mean, weren't there like expressions like that?
Yes, I remember as a kid, somebody would say like "honest Injun."
Yeah,
and like I guess as a reference to sort of, I guess in a way it was sort of implying that a Native American person wasn't
honest,
truthful. Yeah, yeah.
Those harmful stereotypes have definitely caused a lot of havoc.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, show me a stereotype that hasn't caused a lot of havoc.
Yeah, well, they always do.
But definitely something that I like. I saw him say it, and I'm like, oh, Arthur, you are the type.
Yes,
you are the type.
Definitely.
So I think at that point, go ahead. What?
Oh, so the sheriff is saying, that's so funny about that they'll mail a check, and he says, why don't you try that with the judge tomorrow morning?
Yeah.
And he's showing them he's escorting them into the actual jail cell.
And Arthur's like, I'm a prominent physician, and
I'm a doctor.
And
Walter is an
appliance dealer. A prominent appliance dealer.
Appliance dealer.
And I think Hector says, my reputation as a crime fighter is at stake. Yeah. That's why he has to, put them in the jail cell.
Yes. And then he questions them about, why were they driving that camper?
With the two... I wish we could go back and watch that, and I want to after the episode's over, but there was a moment where Hector was literally looking directly at the camera and was saying how the camper had 2 naked ladies on it. And he almost broke character. Like I saw the smile start to form, and I'm like, he is gonna break.
I love sometimes on a show when
they break the fourth wall.
Yeah.
I love the broken fourth wall.
The other show that I love, the British show, Are You Being Served?
Yes.
There's a lot of times where the actors they sort of break character a little and they're laughing, and it's like it's just so funny when it happens.
One of the most infamous or famous, I should say, episodes of The Golden Girls. Where they're all talking about where Rose is like mentioning a story from St. Olaf, and the girls are like laughing hysterically. There were a lot of people that thought that was actually a thing, and it was just them acting.
It was just them acting.
It was just them acting.
Yeah.
There's still disputes over that.
Yes. You'd almost think that that one scene from one of the very early episodes where they're discussing the orgasm. And Rose says it was 3 years before I knew what made your eyes
roll in the back of your head.
And like B had that, she like almost spit out what she was eating. It's like you almost think that was but she wasn't breaking character. That's just what
did.
The character was doing.
And I'm also reminded of an episode of The Nanny where I think the episode was entitled Oy vey, you're gay, or something to that effect. And I think it was a publicist of Maxwell's. And, the publicist says, Fran, I'm gay. And they go in for a hug. And I think the woman put her hand on on the back of Fran's head. And, you know, the facial expressions that Fran did caused the audience to really lose it. And you see the publicist, like, jerk a little bit. So obviously she's trying to hold back some laughter as well. And I always enjoy that. Like, I love watching blooper reels. I love watching just things where you get to see the actors be human beings for a little bit.
So, So Arthur says well, the camper is actually... Maude's nephews.
Who's a hippie.
He's a hippie. And Arthur, he drives a Cadillac.
Which is why your patients have to take the bus.
Right. So he's trying to figure out a way out to get out of this. He tells the sheriff he can call Maude to wire the money. He's like, please let me call my wife.
And Arthur's like, no, we'll call Vivian.
Right.
We'll call Vivian.
Yes. So...
And Walter's like, okay, fine. You're starting to make a little bit of sense. Because I think Arthur goes on some, like, tangent about how Vivian would probably answer the phone.
Yeah, that Maude would probably be out.
If you call Maude, like, she's either going to be out or you're going to get Carol or Philip. And you're not going to want to have a 10-year-old, like, wire you $50.
Right. So, so Arthur calls Vivian, and the phone rings. And it's the answering machine. And apparently Vivian had time to create a whole new
message saying Arthur is out for the weekend and I'm at Maude's.
Yeah.
Leave a message after the beep.
And that's
hold on. Please wait for the beep. And then there's a laugh. And leave your message.
Yes.
And Walter immediately grabs the phone from Arthur and just raspberries into the receiver.
Yes. We cut back to Maude and Vivian. They are still eating. They've got
this time they're eating Chinese food.
Yes.
They're eating Chinese food, and I need to be in a certain mood to have like specific Chinese food. Like, I mean, whenever my family orders it, I will always get like wonton soup because it's.
I love wonton soup.
Adore wonton soup.
Yes.
Or a sweet and sour chicken. What are your favorite dishes from Chinese food?
I like the spicier. Well, not always the spicier stuff, but I like. Egg foo young. I love lo mein. I love General Chow's chicken.
See, I like mei fun.
I do like mei fun. Do you ever try the Singapore mei fun?
No. What is the Singapore mei fun?
It's sort of like a house special thing. Like there's other stuff. There's like roast pork, chicken, shrimp, but there's also a sort of like a curry flavor to it.
Okay.
So it's very different than.
See, I can't do things that are like too spicy. Like
it's not really spicy.
Okay.
It's not really spicy.
I'll have to try that out the next time.
I like it.
That, and I also love Thai food.
I love Thai food.
Love Thai food.
Love pad Thai.
I love pad Thai, and my one of my seamstress friends turned me on to. Oh God, why can I not think of it?
Pad See Ew or something like that.
No, it was oh, blast it all. It's chicken in a sort of curry sauce that has like coconut milk and just spices, and I cannot for the life of me.
Tom something, right?
Something to that effect.
Yes. I have I haven't had Thai food in quite a while, but yes, I
we should have a mother-daughter day.
We should. But yes, I love Thai food.
So they're, eating.
They're eating the Chinese, and I have something about Maude. She wanted
pass
to
the Mughal guy pan.
Before that, she was going to hit Walter in this bald spot.
Yes, because Vivian says that hit the spot.
Yes,
and Maude says I'd like to hit Walter in his bald spot.
Yes, that's when she tells her to pass the Mughal guy pan.
Yep.
Which have I ever had that? I'm trying to remember.
I tried it once.
I think I tried it once.
And that was enough for me.
I don't think I ever had
because the sauce that they use to make Mughal gai pan is very thick, pale, and looks questionable to me.
Sort of like lobster sauce.
Yeah, we'll go with that.
Yeah.
And I remember because it had vegetables in it, it had chicken in it, because I only like to eat chicken.
Right.
Don't get me wrong, I also love a pork stick.
Don't we all?
Such an idiot you are. No, but when I would order the poo-poo platter, I would enjoy the meat sticks and the boneless spare ribs and
love those.
Oh my God, the shrimp toast.
Frank loves shrimp toast.
Oh, I love shrimp toast.
But I can't have that.
I'm sorry.
But I love it. I do love it.
It is good.
I think I told you about. Did I tell you about this? That I had this friend, this girl who came from China, and she had invited me and Frank over to her house for.
Yes,
she wanted to make us the authentic Chinese meal.
Was
nothing like you would get from Chinese.
It was not what you would get from Chinese takeout.
And it was and I'm like I'm a foodie.
You're a foodie.
I love to try new things, and I was like, I really had to control my gag reflex with that meal, literally, to finish it. I can't tell you.
Oh no!
I cannot begin to tell you.
It's funny. Speaking about food and cultures and where everything comes from. Do you know that in Italy, fettuccine alfredo
doesn't exist?
It doesn't exist.
Doesn't exist.
And that there are some Italian restaurants that put it on
there.
They put it on there. So many Americans wanted fettuccine alfredo.
The ugly American, yes.
Quite literally, the ugly American.
Yes.
And chicken parm doesn't exist in Italy either.
I believe it. Well, that whole thing of the Sunday dinner that we're used to as Italian Americans.
Yes.
That doesn't exist there.
No, it does not.
Pasta is part of it's a course.
Yes.
Of the meal, and it's a small part of it, and lots of sauce thrown on it is not a thing in Italy.
Not a thing in Italy. And they use a lot of garlic and a lot of oil.
Yeah.
That much I know for certain.
Yeah. And they like the pasta just lightly coated.
They don't like it. They don't like it doused in cheese.
No,
only like a dusting.
Or whatever sauce it's in. They don't.
There was a TikTok that I saw of someone who made a very basic aglio olio, and instead of putting cheese on top, he put toasted breadcrumbs that were soaked in oil.
Yeah,
and I'm like, that sounds incredible.
Yeah, that's a very Italian thing.
Well,
yes. But yes, food is what we think of the kind of ethnic food we get here in the US,
in the
US is very Americanized for American palates.
Very Americanized for American palates.
It's not what you would get if you actually. I'm sure there are some places that authentically create it the way it's
supposed to be,
but
what is more culturally accurate.
Yeah.
What is more culturally accurate?
Yeah. Let's just say nothing at Olive Garden.
Nothing at Olive Garden.
Nothing at Olive Garden.
Nothing at Olive
Garden would be anything you would get in Italy.
Not in the slightest.
Not in the slightest.
Not in the slightest.
So, Maude is she's saying that, that Walter's going to call any minute to say that he's having the time of his life. And sure enough, the phone rings.
And she goes to answer the phone. And she says, hello? Yes, I know, Walter. You're having the time of your life. Go kiss a fish.
Go kiss a fish.
And she hangs up on him.
Yes.
And the camera immediately cuts back to Walter, who's holding the camera, who's holding the phone, and just has this look of absolute defeat on his face.
And Walter's like, we're going to have to stay in this crummy jail. And Arthur's like, the sheriff is just doing his duty. And that's when the sheriff, he says, oh, I just realized, since tomorrow's Sunday, the judge won't be in for 2 days. The judge won't be in for 2 days.
So they're going to be staying there overnight.
Yeah. Well, they're going to be staying there for 2 days.
Yeah. Kojak was mentioned also a number of times.
Yes.
Kojak was definitely mentioned a few times.
I think Walter, he was demanding their rights, and the sheriff tells him, you haven't been arrested yet, so you don't have any rights.
So you don't have any rights.
Yeah.
That was enjoyable.
Yes.
So they go back
they're now ensconced in the actual jail cell.
Yes.
And that's where we meet Roy.
Yes, we meet Roy.
The other inmate.
Yep.
And Arthur.
It was funny because Arthur's like, they're treating us like your average common criminal.
Yes.
And at that point,
he says to Roy, "Who are you?"
And Roy says, "I'm just your average common criminal."
And I think Arthur questioned about what he was doing because he was writing, and he said he was composing his memoirs.
Yes. And, I think at that point, Arthur was, looking around the wall.
He started reading it was a limerick. Yeah.
A limerick. There once was a girl from Nantucket.
Yes. And Roy says, "Oh, you like poetry? You should see what's written over here." And I think that's when
Roy honestly had some of the best lines in this episode.
He had some great lines. And I believe it's at that point that the sheriff comes back, and he says to Arthur,
he's holding something in his hand.
Yeah, and he says to Arthur, he says, "You're a doctor. What do you make of this?" And he shows him a joint.
Yeah.
And Arthur's like, "Oh, that's cannabis."
And Roy says, "It's what?"
And he says, "Well, more commonly known as pot." And the sheriff is like, "Well, what was it doing under the seat of your car?"
And the audience immediately is just like, "Oh no!"
Mm-hmm.
And I think at that point, that's when Walter's like, "Well, it was my wife's nephew's car, and it's probably his."
It's probably Walter's like, "It's probably my nephew's."
Yeah.
And the sheriff is like, "Well, can I get you something during your stay? Some cards,
magazines, 5-year calendars."
Yes. And then it does a break, and Walter and Arthur they're sitting there in the jail.
Yeah.
And Walter's lamenting.
There were two things that were of note here.
What?
Only in 1974 would a marijuana cigarette be $2.50.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Not by today's standards.
No.
Not by today's standards by a long shot.
No.
But they were also saying how there was a kid who got 25 years for one marijuana cigarette.
For one marijuana cigarette. Walter is,
and that's what they called them. They didn't call them joints or blunts.
Oh.
I don't think I don't think they could have gotten away with saying that
on the street.
I can't stand
the hip kids. Called it a joint.
The lingo?
Yeah, that was the lingo.
The lingo?
If you wanted the cool kids.
I'm done with you. I am finished.
Did I ever tell you?
Oh no.
The one time I did this play. I was in high school, and we were saying how we really wanted to try smoking a joint.
Yeah.
At like the cast party, and this one girl was like, "Oh, I can get you a joint. I can get you a joint," and so she
did she?
Well, she gave us a joint, but and we smoked it, but it turned out it was oregano.
Oh Jesus Christ!
Real pot. So
there was
oregano or something.
My family will sometimes get those prepackaged salads, and they'll come with their own seasonings. And I was looking at it, and I'm just like, in the wrong hands, you can try and panhandle this, and then see what happens.
Jeez.
Oh my goodness, I have an awful story about one time I got very high, but it wasn't with the aid of pot. It was with an edible. And it was two very good friends of mine whom I've known for a few years, and we were rooming at a convention, and it was at the Gaylord National in Maryland, and he hands it to me, and I'm like, what am I supposed to do with this? Am I supposed to just eat the whole thing? And they were like, "Do not eat the whole thing." Okay.
Now, what actually was it? Was it like a? Does it look like a gummy?
It was a gummy because it has the highest concentration of THC.
Okay.
And I should have eaten like a quarter of it.
And you didn't.
I ate about half.
About half. Okay.
And I was obliterated.
Really?
Now mind you, I'd been the evil queen all day, so I still had makeup on, and I'm like, I am literally melting into the bed, and I'm like, this is so bad.
Oh, jeez.
Because, when you're around people, it's different. But when you're alone, you get paranoid. Oh. There was a moment where I sat on the balcony because we had a room that had a balcony. And I'm sitting on the balcony and I'm hearing everybody down by the gazebo and just hearing everything. And I'm like, I need to go inside.
Yeah.
I need to go inside immediately because there is a very real possibility I might throw myself off this balcony. Yeah, it was bad.
Ooh.
When they came, and the worst part was my friend brought a lot of snacky foods. I may have devoured a few things that I did not pay for. And I had Reese's, I had those little mini powdered sugar donuts, the donuts, and so I went to go order food, and I had it brought to the hotel, and it was this, it's literally called a chicken pizza. I think the restaurant is called Meatballs, where they don't have it anymore, but it was literally a fried piece of ground up chicken with sauce and mozzarella on it.
Oh.
And I remember ordering it, and I was eating it, and then everyone started coming back up to the room. And my two friends came up to the room, and I grabbed them by the collar, and I said, "You almost effing killed me!" They were on the floor laughing hysterically. Oh my. Yeah. Yeah. That's my one joint story.
Your one joint story.
My one quote unquote THC story.
Okay. All right.
So moving gaily forward.
So Walter, he's going off the rails. He's yelling for the sheriff.
Yep.
And he said, "You can never find a cop when you need one."
Yes.
The irony being that they're in a jail.
They're in a jail, of course.
So sheriff comes back out, and Walter tells him he needs to make one more call.
Yes.
That's when Arthur sees Roy is whittling something.
Yes. And he's like, "What are you doing? Whittling making a gun?" Yeah. And he says, "No, I'm whittling a key."
A key. Yes, and Arthur's like, this is all a big mistake.
I don't belong here. I'm a doctor. If he mentioned that he was a prominent physician one more time.
And Walter is a prominent appliance dealer.
Yeah. And he asks, what are you in for? And he says, "I'm a society editor for the New York Times."
Yes, and he's just checking things out for Truman Capote. That's where we cut to Walter. He's on the phone, but he's talking to Philip.
Yes.
Apparently, Maude has
gone out for
KFC.
For KFC.
It's a bucket of crunch.
Yep. He says, "I'm going to be in jail for the rest of my life," and she's out getting a bucket of crunch.
And I know Walter said something to Philip about, yes, I know that's what they do on Kojak or something like that.
Yes, he's like, "Yes, I know I should have called my lawyer. Yes, I know that's how they do it on Kojak.
That's how they do it on Kojak.
Just please give Maude this number when she comes back."
Mm-hmm. And Walter's he's basically throwing his hands up at this point. He says they might as well just throw away the key.
Yep.
Nobody knows what we're going through.
Correct.
So Arthur, that's when he tries to get hip with Roy. He's like,
"Relax, Walter. I know the lingo."
Yeah, I know the lingo.
And he goes over to Roy and says, "Hey, sweetheart."
Hey, sweetheart.
Which,
what are you in the big house for? I love his little story. He's there because of black evolution.
Because of black evolution.
Yes.
My granddaddy was an immigrant. Mm-hmm. My daddy was a migrant. Mm-hmm. And I'm a vagrant.
And he points out to Walter and Arthur that the only difference between them is speed. They were going too fast through town,
and he wasn't going fast enough.
Fast enough. Yes, and he tells Arthur, he said, maybe you should write a letter to Ford. He's pardoning everybody. Yes,
but why was that funny?
Because to put it in the reference of the time.
Yes.
Nixon had resigned.
Mm-hmm.
His vice president, Gerald Ford, took over, and one of the first things Ford did when he came into office was to pardon Nixon. And people were not
None too pleased about that.
Not too pleased about that.
Also, it's funny to know that Roy called him Jerry Ford. Gerald Ford.
Yes,
I appreciated
Ford.
that.
Yes.
I appreciated that.
Yes, and because he's pardoning everybody these days.
So Arthur's like, well, what can we do?
Yeah.
And Roy says, well, you take this cup.
Yeah.
And you run it across the bars.
Yes.
Some people call it a prison revolt. We call it recreational therapy.
And Arthur continues to go on that he's a doctor, a prominent doctor.
And he says there's only like one big difference between the two of us.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And he's like, well, you're different. No, that's not what I mean.
Yes.
And he says, you're black. You're used to injustice.
You're used to injustice.
And I wouldn't be so angry if he wasn't right.
Yeah.
If he wasn't right, I would be like, oh, well, that's just racial profiling. Yeah. But no, that's a real thing. Even today, that is a real thing.
Yeah. That's like, that doctor who did the Oprah show.
Dr. Phil.
No, Jane.
Jane. Oh no, Jane. Not Jane Seymour. Not Jane Phillip.
Can't remember her name now. We've talked about her.
And we've talked about her a number of times. And the fact that I still cannot program her name to memory,
I know, really
bothers me.
But Dr. Jane, while you look up her full name, she does that social experiment where she takes a group
Jane Elliott.
Yes, Dr. Jane Elliott. She takes, I think she's a doctor.
Yes.
I'm not sure. She is a doctor, right?
Yes, she is.
She takes a group of people and separates them based on eye color. And they get treated differently by... Do I need to pause?
No, we don't need to pause.
Oh. Okay. She takes a group of people, and they are separated based on their eye color.
Yes.
If you have...
Separated by green, blue eye colors and brown eye colors.
Yes. If you have brown eyes, and I can see you have brown eyes, so you would get treated with preferential treatment.
Yes. And you as someone with blue eyes would get treated poorly.
Poorly. Yes. And, I love that episode of Oprah. Like, they showed, like, the people with the brown eyes.
I actually recently saw on TikTok, as a matter of fact, it was another, Jane Elliott moment, where she was talking about how, and she was asking the audience, she's like, as black women, do you want to get even with your male counterparts or with your white male counterparts? And she's like, women, do you want to get even with men? Or do you just want to be treated with equity where everything is equal for both? And at that point, like, no one applauded, no one clapped their hands for, like, getting even, but they clapped for equity.
Mm-hmm.
And, it really is one of those things where it's like, no one wants evil brought upon another person. They just want to be treated equally and with equity.
Right. And, one of the things she pointed out, because, like, when they, reveal, like, afterwards, like, what the real point of that was, the separation, and, and you see some of these people who had the lighter eyes, they're, like, saying how, like, I can't believe we were treated like this, and blah, 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 and Jane Elliott said to the one woman, she was like, You disliked the way you were treated, correct? And she's like, yes. She's like, you hated how you were treated. She's like, yes. She's like, now imagine. She said, you only had to deal with that for a half hour. Imagine if you had to spend every waking moment of your life feeling that way.
Yeah.
And then the woman was like, she had like,
agog.
Yeah.
She was agog.
Yeah. And I love, like, at one point, like, she says, she says that to all, she's like, how many of you would raise your hands if you would like to be treated the way a person of color is treated?
And no one
raise your hands. She's like, come on, let's. And she's like, because you're not raising your hand, so you know something is wrong.
Something is wrong.
Yeah, so.
You know something is wrong, and that's why, like, my family is the type that will say, "Oh, well, I'm not racist." And
Jane Elliott, she's the first one to say, she said, I am a racist.
Yeah.
She said, if you live in this country, you're a racist. She's like, you can't escape it. It's indoctrinated into you from the moment you're born.
Yeah.
She said, but until you can say, I am a racist, and acknowledge that behavior.
Correct.
To say, I know I'm a racist, I have to, work to not be a racist. You can't. Then you are racist.
You can't escape it because we as white individuals have
white privilege.
Absolutely, we 100% have white privilege. But what I'm trying to get at is we have. Oh my God! And I remember reading it just recently. Basically, that we are where we are. Because of racism.
Yeah.
We are where we are because of the power dynamic that white
This whole country was built upon racism.
Yeah, correct.
This whole country. Yeah. So Arthur's saying to Roy, you're black, you're used to injustice.
And
Walter's horrible thing to say, but true.
And Walter's like, Arthur, what are you talking about? Yeah. And he apologizes. Yes. He says, I'm really sorry that my friend said that. And Roy said, he's pretty close.
Yeah. And Walter's saying, in here we're all the same, and Arthur points out
our penal system works.
But when Walter was saying in here we're all the same, we could be him, he could be us, and Arthur's like, well, he'd be getting the best of that deal.
Yes, he did say that, didn't he?
He did, very cringy. And Walter's like, we're going to be making our own license plates.
Yep.
And then the sheriff, comes to the jail, to the cell, and he tells them, he's got bad news. This is a felony.
Oh yeah, they have to talk to
Judge Sweeney.
Even
the hanging judge. That's going to be 2 to 3 weeks.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think even before that, there was that joke about Arthur saying our penal system works, and Roy turns to the toilet seat and says, "It don't even have a seat."
It don't even have a seat.
And that was that. I enjoyed that. That was very funny. So yes. The Hector comes back out and says that we're gonna have to talk to Judge Sweeney, and Roy says the hanging judge.
Hanging judge, yes.
And then I think at that point,
and he tells them it's gonna be 2 to 3 weeks before they can even see him.
Yeah.
And Walters, he begs, the sheriff again, please let him just use the phone.
No, the phone rings.
Oh, that's right. That's the phone rings.
That's the phone ring.
And that's when Walter begs him to let him answer the phone.
Yep, which was something he should not have done.
No.
But he goes over to the phone, he answers it.
Lets him answer the phone.
Yep.
And it's Maude.
And Maude says, Walter, I weigh 300 pounds.
And then she's like, we've cut to her side of the conversation. We don't see Walter's side. And she's like, jail? And they're eating what look like some delicious caramel apples.
Oh, yeah, they were eating caramel apples. That was
with bibs on.
With bibs, because of course.
Yes, because of course. Well, I mean, if you were wearing one of those outfits,
I wouldn't want to get apple juice on it.
You wouldn't want to get anything on
Absolutely not.
Right?
I listen, any of the outfits that I've made there are times that I get so nervous about wearing a specific garment that something's going to get on it that will not match the fabric.
Right.
And as soon as that happens, I'm like, well, great, do I dye it? What do I do? What are my options here? Yeah. And it's a really terrifying experience.
I know. So that's when, Maude is, relaying the one side of the conversation. She's like,
the canoe tipped over.
And that's when we cut back to the jail, and Walter's saying, I'm not kidding. And Arthur says, put Vivian on the phone. And so Vivian takes the phone.
And she is they're both cackling.
Yes, they're laughing hysterically. Yes, and we're here now. We're back to seeing Vivian and Maude on the phone, and Vivian is laughing. She's saying, we hear her saying, hanging judge. And then we come back to the jail. Arthur is on the phone. He's saying, Vivian, you're hysterical. Slap yourself.
So what does Vivian do?
She hangs up.
And slaps herself.
Yes. And Arthur's like, she hung up. And I have something about them being, comparing them to Laurel and Hardy.
Yes. Hector says, come on, Laurel and Hardy.
Right.
And Arthur's like, we're not Laurel and Hardy. We're a prominent doctor and a prominent appliance dealer.
Yes. That's when he tells Walter, "That's another fine mess you've gotten us into."
Yes. Because, honestly, the one person who's to blame is Arthur.
Yeah. Yes, and he's complaining. No one is going to listen to them.
If there's one thing that I can say about the dynamic between Walter and Arthur is that Walter is very blue-collar, very, not pretentious, not very snide in his way of handling things. And Arthur is the complete opposite of that. Arthur is very pretentious. Arthur is very arrogant, and very white collar. And that's, very plainly seen in this episode.
Yes. Now Arthur makes a last-ditch attempt with the sheriff, and he says, I'm a doctor. I'm a surgeon. I can give you anything. I can give you a free operation.
Yep.
A hair transplant. And of course, Hector Elizondo, being bald,
being very bald, was
he's sort of like,
is that a bribe? And he goes, yes. And then there's a pause.
Yeah.
And Hector is thinking
he's
about it.
He's thinking about it. Yeah.
And then says no.
No.
And I think either right after that or before that, Arthur says, "I was a good little boy.
Yes.
I always did right by others.
Yes.
People always looked up to me. Yes. Even the people whose
the family
died,
of the patients who died on the table. Yes.
He's like, I'm a prominent physician with a wife who loves me." Yes. And he says to Walter, "All you have is a stupid appliance shop in Maude."
Yes. And he's
hysterical.
He was.
He lost it. He's completely lost it.
And he's saying, some kid got 25 years, and then
Roy says he was black. You may only get 10.
You might only get 10. And Arthur's like, 10 years. He's like, Vivian won't recognize me. I won't recognize her.
I literally have written down Arthur snaps.
Yes, he snaps, and he starts ripping everything up. He's ripping the mattress, the pillows.
Yep.
Feathers are flying
everywhere.
And I think he starts banging on the bars.
He grabs the cup and he starts banging back and forth. And Roy starts screaming "Free Arthur Harmon! Free Arthur Harmon!" And Arthur's banging on the bars back and forth and crying rape.
He's crying rape, which yeah,
not. Why?
Yeah, I know. That was yeah. And
Hector comes out, and the first thing Roy says is, I didn't touch him.
And he's like, "What are you doing?" And he goes in there, and he's looking at it, and he's like, Someone's going to have to clean
this
up. And then he sees, he picks up one of the pillows that Arthur ripped, and he's like,
"My wife made me these throw pillows for Christmas."
For Christmas, yes.
Why? Maybe it's the 70s, but why?
It was the 70s.
Why would you, as a police officer, put the throw pillows that your wife made in a jail cell?
He was making them cozy for the prisoners.
I guess so.
Or at least for Roy.
At least for Roy, who was a model prisoner.
A model prisoner, yes. And that's when the sheriff
Hector has had enough. Because he's like, this is New York all over again.
He can't take it. This is why he left New York.
Yeah.
And he realizes that, he can't deal with these two for 2 to 3 weeks.
No.
And he tells him they're the worst prisoners ever.
The worst prisoners ever. He takes the joint and he says, "Look," and he tosses it down the toilet.
Yes. And of course Roy
Roy says, "Why'd you do that for? I could have smoked it faster."
Yes.
And that was enjoyable.
So the sheriff tells him take your ticket and just
he tears up the speeding ticket and tells them to leave.
Just get out of here.
And they go to leave, and Roy follows behind, but then Hector stops him. And Roy says, "What? This ain't a general amnesty?
Was this general amnesty?" And he's like, "No, you're a model prisoner." So Roy goes back in, sits down, and begins to pen a letter.
Dear President Ford. And that's when the episode ends.
That's where the episode ended. And honestly, it was if they didn't have the stuff with Roy.
If they didn't have the stuff with Roy, it really would have been.
It wouldn't have been that funny.
It would not have been a funny episode.
I mean, some of the shtick with Maude and Vivian and the food was.
I enjoyed that. I
was
did.
Humorous. But,
I enjoyed that.
It was a strange episode. Almost feels a little bit filler-like.
Yeah, but I mean, all things considered, the marijuana, the
racial issues.
Racial issues were definitely addressed.
They did.
It was still a quintessential Maude episode. Because if there's one thing that can be said about Maude is that while the episodes are funny, they will still try to touch upon very heavy-hitting issues of the time.
And it's funny that we had this whole thing with the joint, because now with like New Jersey...
With New Jersey
legalizing and recreational
New York is
marijuana.
not that far behind. Like New York has some dispensaries, New Jersey has dispensaries.
Yes. And now there's a thing there's a whole new legality thing that's coming up now, because they're saying, well, since like in New Jersey, it's you can smoke it recreationally, and the thing is like, well, what if your job has drug tests? I mean, because the thing is now, since it's legal, what's
my feelings on the subject are very simple. As long as marijuana is still being registered as a category 1 or 4 drug, I'm trying to think, because it is registered as.
We're gonna find out.
Yeah, we're definitely
gonna find out
because
what it's registered as.
I learned this when I was. I learned this when I was in, I can't even call it medical school, but when I was in vocational school. Pot category. Oh my God, I can't type.
But the thing is now, like, there's a question of like, well, if you smoke it, how,
marijuana is a Schedule 1 substance under the Controlled Substances Act, meaning that it has a high potential for abuse, no currently accepted medical use and treatment in the United States, and a lack of accepted safety for use under medical supervision. Which, my feelings on the subject are very simple when it comes to drugs. If it is in a controlled area, there is no reason why no one should be able to use the drugs that they are more or less addicted to. And I've seen this with shrooms. I've seen this with heroin. I've seen this with cocaine. Like, there are some rehabilitation centers where they will be able to use those drugs in order to wean the person off of them.
Oh.
And those programs are becoming more and more in vogue, and they're definitely being brought to the forefront of the conversation. Because it's like, would you rather them do it in an alleyway where they could potentially die?
Right.
Would you rather them do it in a club where they could potentially again die? Or would you rather them do it in a controlled area where they are supervised, I guess you can say.
Right.
Supervised drug use, I think is what they're trying to put forth. And I mean, obviously the conversation is going to come up when it comes to pot. I do not feel that pot can be abused because I don't think that there is anything addictive in marijuana. Especially if the marijuana is quote unquote clean and not laced with anything.
Right.
Because a lot of dealers will put stuff in there to sort of like pad the packaging.
Well, I think there have been cases here on Long Island where they put fentanyl in it.
Yeah, it's a real thing.
Yeah.
It's a real thing.
Yeah, not good.
Not good at all.
But this is opening a whole can of worms now. Like, well, if they want to do a drug test on you and you've used it recreationally, legally,
they have the right to fire you.
Yeah, do they have the right to fire you?
I mean, if it's contested in a court of law, they could bring it all the way to the Supreme Court.
Right.
And we all know what a bum decision that might turn out to be.
Ooh. Yeah. Absolutely.
I will say this until my dying day. Trump really ruined this country.
Oh, yeah.
I know that it was ruined beforehand, but like at the same time, he really brought out the ugly. He really brought out the ugly. And the fact that he put 3 conservative Supreme Court justices, like, the only thing Biden can really do is even the court.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I don't think he's going to be able to do that. Not with the House and the Senate the way that it is right now.
Yeah.
Which it sucks because once again, it's like, I hear Republicans say, oh, well, Joe has the House and Joe has the Senate. How come he's not doing X, Y, and Z? because there are Democrats that will lean more conservatively than progressively.
Yep. Very true.
So it really is bothersome.
It is.
It really is. But
it really is.
As long as New York continues to be progressive and not red, I think we'll be okay.
Yeah, we'll be okay here. I don't know about other
anywhere
places.
Else.
I don't know about other places.
I mean, what I see happening is that the blue states are going to get more blue. Mm-hmm. And as more people from the blue states move to and travel to red states, the scale is going to be tipped. Mm-hmm. The scale is going to be tipped. In what direction, I don't know yet.
Yeah, I don't know.
But from what I can see is that blue states are going to continue to lean progressive, and red states, because property tax and because X, Y, and Z, it's just going to be very interesting to see in the next 10 to 20 years.
Yeah. I don't know.
Neither do I.
I don't know. But it is what it is.
It is what it is, unfortunately. We thank you so much for listening to another episode of God Will Get You for That, Walter. If you would like to follow us, you can on most forms of social media. You can find us on Facebook and YouTube at God Will Get You for That, Walter, and Instagram at Findley's Friendly Appliances.
Very true.
If you would like to follow me, you can at That Tomcat, where all That Tomcats are found. TikTok, Tumblr, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, everywhere. Tumblr's coming back, especially now. Oh yes.
Oh, I didn't know.
Tumblr is definitely coming back,
Oh,
especially since Twitter is now bought by Elon Musk.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Oh Lord.
Tumblr's coming back. It never left.
I guess I have to reactivate that profile.
It never left.
Oh.
It never left.
Okay.
Honestly, I've always enjoyed going on a Tumblr. Always. Mm-hmm. Whether it was for recreational activities or for just random shit posting.
Okay.
I've always enjoyed that. Where can they find you?
Everywhere Toni Homeperm is. That's Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram. I kind of gave up on Twitter.
I don't blame you.
And I'm not sorry about it.
I don't blame you.
But that's where they can find me.
Fabulous.
Yes.
We thank you so much for listening, and you will hear us on another episode of God Will Get You for That, Walter. Bye, guys.
Good night.